Welcome to the Cool Tools Show. I'm Mark Frauenfelder, Editor-in-Chief of Cool Tools, a website of tool recommendations written by our readers. You can find us at cool-tools.org. I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin Kelly, founder of Cool Tools. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, it's great to be here.
In each episode of the Cool Tools Show, Kevin and I talk to a guest about some of his or her favorite uncommon and uncommonly good tools they think others should know about. Our guest this week is Mike Senese. Mike is the executive editor of Make magazine and a former colleague of mine. He worked as a DIY journalist and a TV host throughout his career with roles at Wired and Ready Made magazines and on Discovery and Science channels. Hey, Mike, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Yeah, we're really eager and glad to have you share some of your favorite tools with us.
Well, I'm honored to be part of this, and
Cool.
Kevin, we haven't had a chance to meet in person, but it's exciting for me to get to even talk to you on the podcast. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, yes, our delight.
Mike, just remind me, you did a show, I think it was called like If You Catch It, You Can Keep It, or
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It was called Catch It, Keep It. That was a lot of fun and really wild and kind of goofy, but it was a TV show that came from the same heritage of like Junkyard Wars and Scrap Heap Challenge and some of the same producers, where we would bring each episode, we would bring in 3 contestants that didn't know each other, put them together as a team and tell them that they had to build something in 48 hours to overcome some massive monumental force of destruction that was going to destroy the prize that they would win if they could stop it. So a pretty fun and over the top show concept, and a ton of fun, frightening at times. But
it was really fun.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and are there videos of it on YouTube?
There are. It's been a little tricky to find. I actually went through recently and tried to archive as much of it as I could to my personal website, just so I've got my own, my own copies of it. But I recently had a call with the Discovery people, and in that call, I pushed pretty well on trying to get them to get it onto the new Discovery Plus platform, which apparently is going well. It's working out pretty well for Discovery, and they're figuring out how they're doing it. So they're looking into that. They said, "Oh, of course it should be," but they said back then, this was 2009 when we did that show. So it's, it's been a little bit, people signed away rights to lots of different things, and no one even had the idea of streaming at that point. I think we were one of the first shows into HD at when we were doing it. So,
wow. Well, hopefully those will resurface and so people can watch them because they're
you can find a bunch of it on my site, MikeSenese.com.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
okay,
that's great.
Well, thanks. We'll put that link in the show. Because I would love to see it. I remember Junkyard Wars, which was a really cool concept, and then disappeared off the face of the earth, never to be seen again.
Right.
But even trying to find some of the old MythBusters are hard unless you, I guess, now subscribe to Disney Plus, which I haven't even checked out yet. But
yeah,
it is amazing all the great stuff that is kind of this orphan mode. Waiting for, unfortunately, the only way you see it is you pirate it, which to me is like an insane business model, but,
Yeah. Well, and I think that they're finally getting to the point with all these streaming platforms, now suddenly everybody's got one. You got Discovery Plus, you got Disney Plus, Paramount's just doing theirs, HBO Max and a million others. And, when Netflix came out, you had this cord cutter concept where you could just get rid of cable and you just got one thing and you're good and you're just the show that you want. And suddenly everybody's jumped in and, I look at this and I'm like, oh, my cable bill just tripled because I have to have all the platforms now.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And yes, I think the idea of there only being one is just not going to ever happen.
No, everybody wants to get in on it.
Right. So, Mike, tell us about some tools that you're really excited for these days. What's number one on your list?
Okay, so in these, I made a little list for you guys, and they're not in any real particular order. But I love tools, and I violate that rule of a tool should be it should be for a specific job. I violate that constantly. Because I grew up with a very handyman family. My mom and dad they were always making and building things. And so, it was nice to have access to a tool when I needed it. And I still like that feeling. So anyways, first on my list is one that I actually have been using quite a bit recently. And this is a skateboard multi-tool. It's a T-shaped tool that has on each end a different sized socket. And the first one of these I got when I was in 8th grade. It was the Gull Wing 6-pack, it was called. And it was super handy, and I actually still have that one. And I was using it not too long ago, and kind of got nervous that it's a vintage piece now. So I upgraded. Actually, I kind of downgraded because I think that the original one was a better quality tool, but I don't want to mess it up. To one that I found on Amazon that has some additional features. Got a ratcheting socket on one end, so you can bolt on your trucks, and it's got a die on one side. So if you're if the axle for your trucks is getting chewed up and you can't get the nuts on and off to get your wheels on and off, you can redo it. And it's been really nice for me because over the pandemic and a little bit before that, but really over the pandemic, one of the things that me and my family have been doing a lot is skateboarding. We built a little ramp in our garage, and my son's just about to turn 7, and we like to go out there and we just roll back and forth. And then if we go on a drive somewhere, which we're starting to do a little bit more of now, we've been looking for different skate parks in the area and find maybe a place to grab some food and then go to the skate park and have a little picnic and roll around a little bit. And, even my wife, she's practicing on a skateboard too. So this has been getting a lot of use, and it's just kind of representative of the fun that we've been having together as a family with this as our activity.
So tell us about what it does.
Yeah.
All the different things.
Yeah, sure. So, the longest side of it, it's got a socket for the bolts that would put the truck bolts on. There's 8 of those. And I think it's probably 1/4 inch. I'm going to take a guess here. The 2 sides has one for the smaller of the sockets. There is for the wheel nuts. I think that's 1/2 inch, and then the larger one, slightly bigger than that, maybe 5/8. Guessing, but it's approximately that size, is for the kingpin, and that's the one. That we're constantly tightening and loosening the trucks, which is what you do through the kingpin, so you can get a good feel for how much flex the trucks have, and how wobbly the skateboard will be. And at first you want to have a little bit of tightness, then you want to, loosen them up a little bit as you get a little more comfortable on the board. But the new upgraded one, I mentioned it has that, the ability to tap out the axles. It also has on the top, it has a file. So you can, when you put on the grip tape on top of your skateboard, a lot of times you want to go around and just get a good kind of smoothed out edge around the skateboard, so it's not peeling up. And with this file on the top here, that's nice to use for that. It's got a Allen key with a Phillips head screwdriver that slots right into the middle of it, and then it comes with 2 additional socket pieces that go right into that bottom socket that you can use for. One of them's a bigger Allen one, and the other one's just a round cylinder that you would use as a bearing puller to pull if you want to take the bearings out of your wheels and clean them up. And but the ratcheting aspect of it, you can hear it. There's something really pleasing about that as you just twist those wheels on. You don't have to kind of constantly be changing your wrist around. You just click, 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 put your wheels on it or your trucks on and off. It's really nice.
And it's it's about $20 or $19 on Amazon, so it's very affordable.
Yeah. It's good. There's a little piece here on that ratcheting part that's plastic, and mine's holding up, but it is something that I looked at that when I got mine, and I said, hopefully this is, I don't drop it off the back of something tall or out of the window of a car, but it's working, so that's good.
Have you ever had to use the threader?
I just did. I actually just did the other day. I got one of my buddies, Noah. He gave me his old skateboard, and he and I grew up together. We became friends at the end of 6th grade because we both were skaters.
Cool.
And like 11-year-old skater. So, we both were getting into that. And this is like middle of the 80s, like sort of the start of the Bones Brigade era. And the other day, he said, "Hey, do you want this old board of mine?" And I was like, "What? Tell me the story." He's like, "Oh, I traded this with Chris, and he took my blockhead. I took this one, and it's a Vision board, Mark Gonzalez, original Mark Gonzalez board. It's seen some wear and tear, but it's the real deal. It's not a reissue, and it's got the old trucks on it. The front truck's an Indy, and the back truck's a tracker truck, which is kind of a goofy thing too. And so I went through and I was putting in some old wheels, vintage old wheels, but a little bit nicer, putting some new bearings on it too. And as I was doing it, I cleaned up the bolts on the axles there so I could get the nuts on nice and well.
Wow, that's really cool.
Right before the pandemic, my parents were moving, so I went up over there to help them move, and I found like my old comics and stuff up in the attic. And one thing that I found was my cache of old Thrasher magazines. I have some from like 1981.
Oh,
This is
wow.
how far back they go. And they're like so much fun to look at.
Yeah, there was just such a cool vibe and aesthetic that, and then some of it's just like, for me growing up, kind of figuring out like what does cool mean, and defining that by reading old thrash. There were new thrashers at the time, but like that was it was really instrumental in kind of building up really what turned into. It's funny because it turned into a sort of a theme for my life, which a lot of it was set in place by my parents of being hands-on and building things and making things. But I was able to express that with skating as a kid, building ramps and finding supplies and taking things apart and trying to clean up bearings and just figure out how to make things work better and roll better and have fun with the resources that we have around us. And, a lot of that came from those old thrashers.
Yeah. Such a great magazine. All right. Well, what's next on your list?
So next on my list, I put, and this is something, I put these silicone measuring cups on here. And this was something that, that's funny how like the human brain can conjure something. So one of the things that I've been having fun with in the garage as we roll back and forth is making these wax skulls. I bought a silicone wax or a silicone skull mold, a pair of them on Amazon a year ago. And just for kicks, I've been melting down wax and pouring them in and then letting it congeal and opening up and see how they look and changing colors and melting crayons into them and having fun with it and trying not to make a big mess. But it's been really kind of a rinky-dink operation on my side. And part of what I'd been using was some old tin cans from, I don't know, probably some garbanzo beans or something that we had used for a salad. And I started getting to the point where I was thinking, I really wish that I had a silicone cup, because when the wax hardens off of these the molds, you can just kind of fold them apart and the wax breaks out and pops apart, and it's just so easy to manipulate. But it's a pain in the butt with the tin cans and everything else that I've been using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they stick.
Yeah, and you have to kind of dig in there and poke around. Like I'm just trying to clean things up, and so I thought to myself, well, let me just see if such a thing exists. I don't know. Maybe I could try to make something, but and so I looked on Amazon, and of course, there's like 500 variations of that exact thing. And so I bought a set that looked suitable for me. It was about 10, maybe a little bit less than $10. It came with 2 larger ones and a couple smaller ones, and it came right away. And they're pliable and just so satisfying. And it's been fun. I mean, it's just like a total nonsense little side thing that I've been doing. But that addition to it has made it just another new step of enjoyability to the whole process. And now I'm thinking, what else can I use them for? And they're marketed for people working with epoxy as well, which I think it's brilliant, because that would be a great way to use these.
Yeah, you can use them for paint too, because they also the same thing. They make it just clean up very, very easy. I
That's a great
use
point.
little tiny micro silicone bowls to mix my epoxy, like 5-minute epoxies in, and then you let it harden, and then it just pops right out. So you just reuse these bowls again and again instead of even going through plastic ones.
That's
It's
really smart. Yeah. I've been trying to do, I didn't even think of that yet. Cause all the epoxy stuff that I do, which isn't too often, but when I do, it's always, I've got a scrap of wax paper in the garage and an old, popsicle stick that I keep trimming smaller and smaller. But yeah, that's really smart. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you can find them. They're, I don't know, called nano bowls or tiny silicon bowls. Same idea. Anything that hardens, including paint, you can mix in these bowls, and they're just turn them inside out, and they're clean.
Love it. That's great.
Tell me a little bit about that skull mold. Is it like a silicone? Is it like for making candles typically, or
I think it's marketed, and again, it's another thing you can find it. Lots of variations of this on Amazon and anywhere else, eBay, etc. But it's marketed for ice cubes, and it does a terrible job at making ice cubes because if you guys have ever tinkered with freezing ice, it always comes out cloudy. And then over the last few years, a few people started figuring out there's actually a whole clear ice community out there, and it's super nerdy and awesome and really cool. And it's been fun to see this clear ice community figure out how to really dial in a small and efficient clear ice system. And it involves, there was Kickstarters about this, and now you can actually find these like different forms of these clear ice tools, or ice, like big ice cube, whiskey ice cube ball systems. You can find them online, all the different big outlets. And it involves doing directional freezing. So you've got a pool of water, and then you've got the mold that sits above it with water that leads into it. And as the ice freezes, it'll freeze from the mold down into that pool of water, because the pool of water is insulated around the outside of it. And as it freezes downwards, it's pushing the air downwards that's trapped inside of it. So it ends up, you get the ice cube without the pockets of air in it, which causes the cloudiness. So it works really well. And actually, I did buy one of those setups. I wrote a few different how-tos on it, and then ended up buying one because it got so dialed in and became so easy and small and convenient that it was just better to buy a system to do it.
But it doesn't work on the skulls.
It does well. It's not for these, because these the molds for the skulls that I got are the type that it says, make skull ice, and there's no other apparatus to it. It's just a mold. And you could, it works. It's just going to look terrible compared to when you look at what a crystal clear version of it looks like. So I've been pouring wax into them, and my thought was, we could maybe take these and use them to wax up a curb if you're going to go skating and you want to do some grinds on the curb, you wax up the curbs with these. I tried doing some candles, and the candles melted really oddly because it's not designed for candles. I had to figure out how to get a wick in there, and the wick was kind of towards the back, and it just sort of burned out the side of it. And it's fun. It's I don't know, at any type of mold making and mold use, I actually find it to be really pretty fun, because you put it together and then you have to you wait overnight. You wake up in the morning and peel it apart, and there's a satisfaction, like that kind of crackling sound of peeling the mold off of something. And then it reveals itself, and there it is. And it's really cool.
That sounds great.
That's cool.
The clear ice community. I love it.
I was not aware of the clear ice community. We'll have to visit that. Or maybe your fifth tool might be a suggestion of the best clear ice system.
I'll add one in. Yeah, I can send you guys the link to the one that I got. Yeah, because there's a few of them out there now.
But tell us about your third choice. It's the opposite of ice in many ways.
Exactly. Yeah. So the third one on here, I put down plasma cutter, and the reason that I put this on here is because plasma cutting for me is the closest to feeling like a superhero, like that I actually have superhuman abilities. It's the closest that made me feel like that to anything else that I've ever really done. Welding being second, because you've got with welding you're fusing two pieces of metal together, but with plasma cutting, you are cleaving materials apart that it just doesn't make sense that you've got the ability to do this, and they're compact, and it's so powerful, and it's just kind of astounding. And it had been a long time since I had the ability to tinker around with plasma cutting. But I always wanted to do more of it. So I recently was able to access the Hypertherm PowerMax 30 Air, which is the one that I was noting to you guys. It caught my eye because it has a built-in air compressor, and one of the things that was always challenging with welding and with plasma cutting is that you need to have an air system of some sort. With a welder, you have to have if you got a MIG welder, you have to have your gases for that, or the TIG welding, same thing, tungsten gas for TIG welding. With plasma cutting, you have to have a big compressor that's got enough force to keep the plasma moving, and then enough storage that it doesn't just constantly recharge itself. And I don't have that in my house. I don't have space for big air compressor systems. Mm-hmm. But then I saw this thing, and it's kind of newish, and it's got a built-in compressor. And I guess I was really curious. Would this actually do the job? Could you plasma cut with it and do extended work with it and have it actually be adequate? And it is. It's pretty amazing.
And how much does it cost?
This one's a little bit on the pricier side. This one's about $2,000.
Oh, okay.
And you can get plasma cutters. You can go to Harbor Freight and get a plasma cutter for a few $100 or a couple $100. And they probably do a fine job. I haven't used the ones that are at that level. But this one, it's that company Hypertherm. This is like their lowest level machine. So they're building stuff that's pro grade, and the problem with it, there's two problems that I had. First one is that this one is a complete violation of what I was saying at the start of our conversation here, where I don't have a project for this. It caught my eye, and I was like, yeah, I missed plasma cutting. I've got an opportunity to get my hands on one of these. Let's tinker with it. And my mind spiraled. I'm like, oh, I'm going to build giant dinosaur skeletons for the backyard and all that fun sculpture stuff. But I haven't. And part of that's because, especially now with the pandemic, cost of everything, cost of materials is just crazy. It's just skyrocketing. Yeah. So it's hard to work on any projects right now. The second problem that I had is that in the time since I had really done much with plasma cutting before until now, I've actually spent a lot of time in the digital fabrication world. A lot of, mostly because of all the make stuff that we're doing. And I've gotten really accustomed to the precision of CNC. And so I got my hands on this plasma cutter, and I started working my way through some scrap metal, and I was like, wow, this looks really crappy. This is not, you'll see like examples of plasma cutting where they actually have like these great CNC plasma cutting tables, and you'll make, perfect, you make bike gears and all the components and everything's perfect and it looks so good. And then when you do it like this, it looks like you're trying to cut a big thick piece of cardboard with some really dull student scissors. It's just jagged and all over the place. And so, now I'm thinking, okay, could I take this and could I build it into a CNC table, and so it's like the whole thing's spiraling. I don't have, and again, get me right back to the problem. Like, well, I don't have space for the air compressors, much less a plasma table with a big water tank under it and all the other stuff. But I want it. I really want it. I don't know what to
do. That's great. So again, to describe this for the listeners, what this looks like, it's like a kind of like a generator size machine.
Exactly.
That, has a handle, a torch-ish handle on it where the plasma comes out. Is that basically right, with a hose between them?
Yeah. I mean, if someone's familiar, with just kind of like loosely familiar with personal sized welding machine, it's really easy to confuse a plasma cutter with a welder. They have the exact same form factor. They kind of look like a quadruple sized shoebox on its side with some dials on the front, couple of leads coming out of it. One of them's the plasma gun. The other one you clip on to complete the circuit onto your piece of metal or your table that you're working on, and then a power cord on the back. This one runs off of standard 110 voltage, so you can plug it into your garage wall without having to worry about having 220 or something, something heavy duty like that. And it's just, a knob or two to work with.
And the air compressor works on that, so you don't need to have the big air compressor. And the way that it, and it's, does it burn? Where does the heat come from? Is it just electric heat that makes the plasma that burns the steel?
Yeah, it is. So it's there's no gas involved with it. You can cut metal with some really high intensity torches, but this one it's electric. You create this really high intensity spark that's creating the plasma, and then you've got the air component of it, the compressed air component of it, which is really just forcing out the slag of what the plasma itself is producing. And it's actually kind of simple. Once you look at how the whole operation works, the circuit's completed by having that the lead that connects to the metal that you're working on, and then you could just get that plasma gun tip close enough to the metal itself, and it creates the spark, and you just hold it as close as you can without really getting in there, and you just try to keep it at a steady amount of steady distance and a steady rate of movement, and try to get a nice clean cut. And that's the part where it just gets so jaggedy, and it's impossible to do it by hand and have it look the way that it does with a CNC setup. And now I'm spoiled.
Yes, I get it.
That sounds cool. So tell us about the Particle's new boron microcontroller.
So this one, cool. So I'm really excited about this. With Make, we talk a lot about microcontrollers, and I'm very agnostic about all the different brands and types. And, I'm a big fan of everything that Arduino's been doing and how they really, they kicked things off for this whole community to exist. But I wanted to put this one on here because I got really excited about this new thing that Particle set up lately. Month or two ago, Particle made an announcement. So Particle's a microcontroller company, and they've got a focus on IoT. They work with a lot of companies to put devices into their products so that they can communicate with the internet. And I know jacuzzi is always one of the big ones that they talk about. I guess there's a connected jacuzzi hot tub that you can get. But you'll find some of their devices inside of the scooters, the rideshare scooter setups and so forth. And Boron is one of their products. It's one of the boards that they've had. It's been around for a couple years now. And it works with cellular data. So some of the boards, originally, like the original Arduino came out, and you'd have to plug it in with USB, set it up, program it, and then you can unplug the USB, plug it into a power source, and it would run the program that you have working on it. and to make a servo move or to make a light blink or, a million other things, exciting things. And then some of the companies started adding in Wi-Fi as a capability, way to communicate with it or to control it or to connect with it. And then Particle, they did the same thing where they had some Wi-Fi on some of their boards, and then they added a couple of boards that had cellular capabilities, an LTE cellular capability. The Boron was one, and I think the other was the Electron. And again, professional use in mind, and something that I didn't really tinker with much at all, but we reported about it. And then earlier this year, they made a big announcement that they were adding a tier to their cellular package for makers that would allow for free cellular data and free use of the Particle the Particle Cloud platform. And I think that's just it's so exciting, because if you're working on a project that's needs some form of long range communication, Wi-Fi was really like the only thing you could do that was free. There's some stuff that's coming out now, like LoRa is growing in popularity in Europe. And I'm starting to get really nerdy just even talking about some of these different wireless communication protocols. But cellular is everywhere. Everybody's got a cell phone now, and you can't. It's hard to go too far away from any populated area without having cell coverage. And now you could create a project with this with the particle board, a maker scale project, and interact with it anywhere. And it's free. And that's just, it just kind of opens up all these exciting ideas of ways that things you could build or make or do.
Anywhere you have a cell service,
exactly,
you can have this thing reporting back to you or reporting back to a citizen science project. It's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah.
And it's cheap too. It's $60.
Yeah. And how does the cell thing, like, do you get, does it kind of like all go through basically kind of one number, and then you have like a sub number that would divert your data to your place on the cloud, I would imagine?
I mean,
how it works?
I think what they're doing is each device has its own unique thing altogether. So when you get, when you got this, when you get one of these, you register it with their system, and the one that I've been tinkering with, I mean, it was really quick. It just fired up and it was ready to go. But with that, it also made me think. I know people that have found discarded scooters, like those bird scooters that, so some people trashed those things pretty badly when they were really starting to make the rounds throughout cities. And I know people that harvested some of the parts from the inside of those. And I said, I don't know if I would plug those boards in that you might have taken out of there, because they're all unique. I think that if the company wanted to find out where those boards are, it's like finding a cell phone and plugging in, turning on. Someone's like, oh, there's my cell phone. It just went back online.
Right.
So that's my understanding of it. And I'm not, an expert in exactly how it works, but it seems like everything is running off of its own unique ID. It has its own SIM in it, or SIM type thing in it.
Sure.
Do you have any plans in mind for one, like the future project that you'd like to use it for?
I've built something. So I've got a family member that lives nearby, and they live in a little gated community. And the gate in their community, it's pretty basic. You have to have a remote, like a standard garage door remote, to open it. Mm-hmm. Or there's a keypad at the start. Right at the entrance to the gate. And anytime they have a guest come over, they either have to go down to click the button to open the gate, or they have to tell the person what the code is. And if it's a stranger, someone's coming over that's just for popping by for something, then it can be awkward. You don't necessarily want to have a random person knowing what that code is. Kind of violates, having that gate there. And so I've been thinking about a lot of different ways of like, how could they build something that could fit around this? And actually that's the thing. When this announcement came out, that was the first thing that popped in my head. I said, aha, just solved it. There it is. That's the solution. The gate's too far away to have Wi-Fi reach it, but of course there's cellular there. It's because cellular is everywhere. And so I bought a remote, and we linked the remote, a spare remote. We linked it up to the gate, and then I breadboarded a really simple circuit using a NPN transistor to work as a switch, and then soldered a couple leads from there right into the push button, either side of the push button on the remote, and then I put together a really simple web app that has a button on it that says "Click Gate." You press that button, and the board itself closes the circuit, which jumps that push button, and the remote transmits the open signal. And then we went down and we put it inside the gate and just hit it inside the opener apparatus. There's an extra power plug in there, and it works. And now they can open the gate.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like they could open the gate from anywhere because it's now internet. It's on their cloud. So if this person was on the other side of the planet, if they were on a business trip in Singapore and someone was at the gate, they just click that web button and the gate opens.
That's amazing. What a cool project.
Yeah, it's really satisfying. Cool. Really, really satisfying. That one's given me a lot of smiles lately.
I love that. That's so cool. So Mike, we just have a couple of minutes, but I wanted you to tell us about, I know this is something you've been doing for a long time, so you know a lot about it, pizza making.
Yeah.
So you have a website about pizza making, or at least some pages about it.
Yeah. So pizza making's really been one of my biggest passions since forever. When I was in high school, I worked at pizza places. When I was in college, I worked at pizza places, and even after college. It's just been this journey of like, okay, how do you make the perfect pizza? And so I've spent a lot of time, a number of years, just trying to figure out, and it's from the beginning. Working at a pizza place doesn't really show you, okay, like this is actually how to make dough the right way, and this is how to make sauce the right way, and this is how to use your own home oven to actually bake a good pizza. So I just spent years and years collecting pieces of information about like different ways of making all the ingredients decently, and how to use your kitchen appliances in different ways, how to use your broiler to cook pizza instead of just using the oven itself, or how to use the stovetop, or barbecuing. I actually barbecued pizza, which a lot of people I think are doing now, but that's probably the second best way of making pizza aside from having your own wood-fired oven. And so, yeah, I've put a lot of it. I've got my site that I was maintaining really actively for a long time, called MikeSenese.com/do it. And it was just a lot of DIY project-y stuff. But I put all my pizza blogging ended up in there too. And
great.
Yeah, it's fun, kind of like the Clear Ice community that I was talking about before. There's like a huge nerdy pizza community online as well. And so I've gotten to be friends with a lot of people in a lot of different parts of the country. And even when I travel abroad, I always end up finding different pizza places. And it's kind of silly to be like in Japan eating pizza, because I should be eating Japanese food because I'm in Japan, but I've got to test out the Japanese pizza while I'm there.
And they make great pizza.
They do. They actually do make some really good pizza. Yeah. So that's so cool. Yeah, that's been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
So MikeSenese.com/do it.
Yep. That's it.
We'll have a link to it.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And so, Mike, we have to run because we're going to record another episode, but this has been a blast catching up with you.
Yeah, you too.
Learning about your projects. All really cool stuff and a lot of surprises in here too. So thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you guys as well. It's an honor.
Hey, everybody. It's your co-host, Mark, and I wanted to let you know that we have a lot more going on here in Cool Tools than just this podcast. We have our flagship website where we review a new tool every day. That's at cool-tools.org. We also have 4 different newsletters. We have this podcast. We have a YouTube channel where we review tools. And if you like what you hear and see and read, the best way to help us out is by going to our Patreon page at patreon.com/cooltools and donate at any level you wish. You can even contribute $1 a month, and that would mean a lot to us. The money that you give us will go towards paying for our transcribing costs, editing videos, and editing the podcast. It goes towards paying contributors who write the reviews for us. It goes towards our equipment costs, our hosting costs, and it supports our very small company of 3 people. This week, I wanted to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters who have been giving us at least $2 a month. And if you give us $2 a month, we'll give you a shout out online. And this week, I would like to thank Michael Sakochia, Molly Starr, M. Velderman, Opposable Thumbs, Pamela Cooley, Patrick Weyer, Paul Hosey, Randy Fisher, Stuart Burrows Brand, Synaptic Sam, Therese Schwartz, Tom Hawkins, Tom Markham, What Bear, Javier Pangolin, David Lang, Eric Byers, Sean Hartley, Stephen Powell, Greg Lichtscheit, John Hobson, Adam Bristol, Adam Naher, Anonymous, Bill Kempthorne, Bruce I. Niles, Chris Woodruff, C. Kolos, Daryl Flynn, Egg Fleegoff, Eric Hanschrau, Eric Hoover, Godfrey Saldana, Jay Skiles, John M. Larson, Jude Galligan, Kenneth Gilman, and Lucas Frank. Thank you very much for supporting the show, and we will see you next week.